Hello everybody. Today we are going to talk about what you see behind me. We're going to talk about the first committee on geologically defining continents 2021, or just COG-DC 2021, I guess. There's today's date. The committee was actually formed only 3 days ago on the 9th. Now, I need to talk about this because somebody did ask me to do a video and what the purpose is so they don't have to read through a bunch of stuff, or I don't have to write a bunch of stuff. I guess that's fair. This committee, like I said, was formed on the 9th. It's the 12th of April. And the purpose of this committee is to geologically define what a continent is. Because believe it or not, even though since the 16th century, this word has been used as most people would generally think of it, there's no hard definition. I mean, it's Latin and the root is basically continuous land, but that's not a good definition for scientific purposes. And if I take this little inflatable globe here, and if I ask you, what is a continent? You might go, oh, North America, Eurasia, you might split out Europe, Africa, South America, Antarctica, etc. But those aren't definitions, those are examples. And continents can mean different things to different people. Outside of geology, it can mean something totally different. Human beings being human beings want to be special, especially if they share some sort of common ethnic or culturally or whatever. So that has started to lead in the past 10, 20, 30 years or so, people applying the term outside of geosciences just ad hoc. They'll use the word continent when they mean region within a continent and things like that. And the problem with defining continents based off political boundaries, as we have all known, those of us that have been born, between 1945 and 1980, just how frequently those things change. We don't need to go back to the beginning of time. We need a definition that works and is rigid enough to where it's not going to change every time somebody has a war or a dispute or redraws a line on a map. So we are going to redefine it from a geologic standpoint, and in the actual information packet, if you will, I do give a list of what we are considering disciplines of geology. For the purposes of what we are doing, it will only include those. I know there might be more others might include. There might be new ones in the future I haven't thought about. I can't worry about what's down the road. I can only worry about what's happening now. We have no definition of continent. Why is this a big deal? Several reasons. Because even though this has its own root words, it serves as a root for other words that have been used for a very long time. So the definition of this is going to directly affect these. And there's more. And some of these will be redefined as well, or locked down, maybe not redefined, but defined, in general. But we're not going to go down rabbit holes. We will define what we think is relevant, and there will be a glossary, if you will, of the paper, which is actually scheduled for February of 2022 as of right now, and if everything goes as well, that's when it will be released. But there'll be a glossary section for words we aren't redefining, but we are uniquely using, so we need to define those therein. But like I said, we aren't going down any rabbit holes. We aren't going to define every word and every definition and then just keep going and going and going and going, because that serves nobody any good. And it's a waste of time. Pure and simple waste of time. So the definition of this word is important. And the fact we've been using it for so long, and it's entrenched in so much of our literature. I mean, those of you who have seen my publications here, I bet the word, I've got these two huge shelves here. I bet probably 20-30% of them use the word continent, and some of these other words too. To sit there and axe the term and say it's useless, we needed to use something else, is impractical. When you do something like this, and this is from personal experience, when you just go and kicking down doors, tossing out, words no one's ever heard or used before, no one's going to accept it. Everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, that February 2022 paper. Yeah, you can't do that to people. And like I said, especially when something's been entrenched so long, we can define it. There's already been people have suggested things, and they're great suggestions, but The deadlines will be linked below, and in the links below, it will show you, if you are interested in joining this, how to do so. There is an application to fill out. If you plan on voting, you have to have a bachelor's degree in geosciences. You just have to, because the term's going to be for us. All right, but anybody can participate, but you have to fill out the application if you want your name in the paper. I'm not asking for your home address, your social security number, or anything. I just want to know basically your legal name so it can be put in the paper. And another reason for just keeping the word continent is, how many people remember this year? It's loosely connected. Well, the IAU defined for the first time in a scientific context what this word means. Now, some of you like me are old enough to remember, and they didn't even change the word. This word has been around even longer than continent. It's been around since ancient times. It means wanderer, and the fact that the IAU has changed the definition and adapted it to science goes to show you language changes. People use it for their own purposes, and that the root meaning of a word is useless 99.9999% of the time. But anyway, they took this word planet, and even in scientific context, people have been using it for a couple hundred years, a little more, and they just defined it. That's all they did. And those of you who remember, and it's still to this day, this is a sore spot with people. But you know what? There's a working definition now. All right. So, you had to sacrifice this. I don't know what to say. It seems like a small price to pay to have a good definition to me, but whatever. All right. So that's why we aren't going to toss out the baby with the bathwater and just get rid of the word continent. We're going to talk a little bit about tectonics, and tectonics is one of the disciplines within geology listed in the pamphlet explaining what disciplines constitute geology, if you will. However, we are not going to define the continents from a tectonic standpoint. I don't want 90 different loosely scattered definitions. I am going to try to structure them down to maybe 5 that I think are usable, that people can vote on. All right, and they may get a little lengthy. And although tectonics falls within geology for the purposes herein, it will not be how we define continents, because we want to keep some sort of consistency with the way people think of what a continent is, especially in geology, because even within geology, a structural geologist might have a totally different concept of what a geophysicist has. Although the definition we come up with will be used by tectonics, will not be a synonym. It will not be in lieu of tectonic plates. Geophysicists and people who study tectonics can define the plates however they want. Just because they have some of the same names is irrelevant. All right, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater there either. Okay, there's no point in defining continents as plates, because not all plates, Scotia, Pacific, have what most people would consider continental land masses on them. So it's impractical. Plus, the ocean plates, ocean-dominated plates, are temporary. In 300 million years, they'll all be gone. But these, for the most part, they will look like this, but they'll still be here because, the oldest continental crust goes back almost 4 billion years. So there's no point in defining the word continent from a strictly tectonic standpoint either, although it may seem like a good idea to use mid-ocean ridges and subduction zones. Another problem with that is once you go back to pre-Pangea, we have no idea where those were. All we can do is reconstruct where the continents were through paleomagnetism on the globe. I can't tell you exactly where what rift was where when. So that's another huge problem with the whole thing. I will be the arbitrator, and it will be through the Midwest Institute of Geosciences and Engineering. I will be assembling the definitions from your suggestions, but I will not be sitting there saying, just pushing my own or anything like that. And people have already submitted stuff, and there's some good stuff that has been submitted. People have, and I think this is good, using cratons in the definition and continental shelf and slope in the definition as well, and using terms like felsic crust in the definition. These have already been suggested, and I actually think they're pretty good ones. A couple of these are things I didn't even think of. I did think of this, but I really didn't think of this. And it might make another continent that we didn't know about. You know, we might have to call something else a continent, but we can't. Remember, I don't like defining things through exclusion. As somebody with language problems, I have a hard time. It's not effective to do it this way. When you take a word and say, well, instead of saying this word means, giving it a definition, you say this word is not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. That's impractical. So we need a working definition. And hopefully, and I'm actually glad this happened, or thus far. Another reason to do this is to sort of rein in ridiculous claims. I wouldn't say ridiculous. People like to get, they like to create buzzwords. And even though we're scientists, we always are looking for that next dark matter, dark energy, something like that to have our names attached to. And some of you may be aware of the whole Zealandia thing. As you can see, most of it is below sea level and on the ocean floor. I'm pretty confident the definition will exclude that, especially if we put this word in the definition, which I think is key. And several people have already suggested kraton, so it's looking like it's going to be in every definition. Because if we just start looking at continental crust, felsic crust, if you will, and just start slapping the name continent on every single piece of, where does it stop? And it may sound like a, slippery slope argument, but it's already starting, okay? So it's not really just a slippery slope argument. There is some basis for it. All right, but anyway, if you would like to join, need further information, look down below. Follow the link. There's some basic information with the deadlines. They're all there. Hopefully they won't change. You will be directed from that page to go to the Midwest Institute of Geosciences and Engineering's contact page. Fill that out, and you will be sent the application email. The deadline for getting applications in is June. I forget the exact date, but it's in the timetables. Once I send you that, you fill that out, send it back. And you don't have to fill out any suggestions, or you can just put in little blurbs. You don't need to fill the whole thing out like a novel, or you can go crazy and attach other pages. I don't care, but I do need the first part, and it says it in the application so I can give you credit. Anyway, I think that's it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.